Hey there, and welcome back to another edition of Kry Finance, where I'm your host, Kry. Today is October 4th, 2024, and if you don't like it, you can cry about it. But remember, emotions don't belong in this market. So let's leave all that noise behind and dive into today's key insights. This morning, we saw key economic data coming in. We've got the number right here. The non-farm payrolls came in at 254,000 versus the consensus estimate of 147,000. The unemployment rate came in at 4.1%, 0.1% lower than the 4.2% that was expected. Now, all this data suggests that the economy is still holding strong, which could make the Fed's case for future rate cuts more difficult. However, it's worth noting that while the numbers look good, most companies are struggling under the weight of higher rates. So I would expect the Fed to cut rates to help support these companies because they will not last in an elevated rate market. Despite the positive economic data, Spirit Airlines made headlines today, dropping around 40% early in the day due to bankruptcy rumors due to a failure to reach agreements with bondholders about restructuring debt. Let's jump into that here. And it did recoup some losses by the close, but ending down around 25%. Meanwhile, JetBlue closed up 14%, and American Airlines was up roughly 6.5%. So we can see here, Bloomberg reported on this. And also, I thought it was interesting to note this little tagline that Google sent me, which is Spirit Airlines in debt? Yes, the total debt on the balance sheet as of June 2024 is 7.42 billion, and I'm sure it's increased since then because we are a few months from June here, about 4 months to be precise. Okay. So, what's even more concerning about Spirit Airlines is that this is happening during the same time that not Bitcoin, Boeing is having this $10 billion share dilution that was announced just earlier this week. So this is really an interesting time. We've got the uh, we've got the airline industry that's really struggling here as far as Spirit Airlines. We've got Boeing that's having its own problems. We did see JetBlue and these other airlines take off on this news, probably on expected consumers that are for Spirit Airlines going over to JetBlue or United Airlines and all the other ones. But I don't think that this is going to last because if they're having problems with the plane makers, Boeing, and they're having problems with companies such as Spirit Airlines with their debt issues, uh, airlines are actually a pretty terrible business to be in. So it wouldn't surprise me if these companies that or these stocks that have had these gains over the last session because of the Spirit Airlines news come down a bit over the next couple of weeks because these gains are just not sustainable. I mean, JetBlue going up 15% because a peer is possibly filing for bankruptcy is really not something that is going to help their business too much. I mean, these companies have been down. I think American Airlines is down about 56% over the last 5 years. It might be more than that, but it's at least 50%. I know that. So, what do you think? Could there be a systemic issue in the airline industry, in the aviation industry? Let me know in the comments or shoot me a message. Let's talk about this because I think it's really important to discuss. So, speaking more of aviation, let's jump into our charts of the day. We've got Joby Aviation here. We've been talking about this one for the last couple of days. They retreated from $6 yesterday. We talked about that. And they went down to, I think it was about $5.61. Today, they closed up at 5.94. And you could see here, they bounced between that $6 mark and about 5.80 throughout the day, but really focused most of its day flirting with that $6 mark. So we're going to keep an eye on this one still. The hype on Toyota investments is good and all, but as we've seen in the past, which we discussed yesterday, that this hype doesn't tend to last. So we're going to need a little bit more than just Toyota investing in Joby Aviations. All right. So next up is Baozun. This is a Chinese stock. I really don't know what they do. Most of these Chinese stocks are e-commerce. They seem to have their hands in a couple different pots, but really the reason why I'm focusing on this one and the reason why I've zoomed out so much here on this chart is because this company has had some experience in this $6 range, this $6 to $7 range here. Now, this is the most activity that BZUN has seen since, let's see here. This looks like July of 23. Before that, it was November of 22. And then before that, it was way back here. If you're talking about these levels here, talking about level. So it's been amped down quite a bit over the last, let's say, year and a half. And now we're finally getting some action, and it's brought up to $4.22. They had a spectacular day today. They were up about 60 cents or so. But the reason I'm talking about it is because I don't think this rally is over. I know we're really zoomed out here, and it's really not going to do much good zooming in. But it is important to note that this rally is not just this company, it's also other Chinese stocks. I mean, you had to have lived under a rock to not know this, but you've seen Baba, you've seen Baidu, you've seen all these other names from China, especially PDD, Pinduoduo. They've had a tremendous rally over the last week and a half. They were down at about $90, and now they're up to like 150 or 100, maybe even 160 a share. So this one, it's definitely a smaller company, but it's had a lot of experience in that $6 to $7 range. So I believe there's a very good chance that we could test that area. And we didn't do it too long ago. We are looking at a weekly chart or a weekly interval here, but we did it maybe, let's like we said before, like August of 23 or November of 22. That was when we broke out of that area and we pushed up. Here we didn't quite make it over 5, but here we got all the way up to $8. And then again, in the past, this stock has really spent most of its time above that $5 mark that we're seeing there. And it was more so in the $6 to $7 range. And then we saw this big jump. And this is important to note too. This is before COVID that all this was happening with this company. So really, there's a lot of potential here. I don't really care what they do because the story right now is Chinese stocks. So that's that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying buy, I'm not saying sell, but this company looks like it's destined for greatness in the short term. And that's all I can say about that. So we can see over the last day it was up 14%. That was today's session. Over the last 5 days, 16 and a half, and so on and so forth. It's really done great. The last 5 years, not so great, but we just saw that in the big chart there. So I wouldn't get too rattled about the last 5 years here with this company. Moving on to AMSC, and this is one that's been on my radar for some time. This one's also been moving up. It's really just a sleeper. A couple of years ago, there was an article that came out that said they were inventing a new element or something about flying cars. Again, it really is not important. It's just that this company is another one that seems to be destined for greatness. Uh, it's kind of like SMCI, how that one just took off and just did not stop. I'm sure someone's going to get mad at me for comparing these two companies together, but I think it is important to note that there are companies out there that can just keep going. We saw that with NVIDIA over the last couple of years. And I do think that this one has potential to do something similar, maybe not to that degree as NVIDIA. That's getting a little bit overzealous, but we can see some movement here to the upside. Now, if we're taking a look here over the last couple of days, we've been talking about that median band, and this company is just displaying it perfectly. So it's really been holding this median band, and we want to see it continue to do that and maybe move back up to this $29 mark before moving even higher and breaking the previous high, which was around here as well. Okay, so that's enough about that one. Definitely keep this one on your radar. Definitely not talked about enough. And when it is talked about enough, it's already moving quite a bit. So today it had a big day. it was up about 11%, but that's not even close to what this thing can do, in my opinion, especially if they're out there inventing new elements. And hey, if that's not true, it doesn't matter to me because the market is going to be buying that it's true if that sort of news comes out again. So, again, we haven't heard too much about that since then, but definitely want to keep this one on your radar in case you do. Okay. Another company that we saw that had a great day today was PLTR, Palantir. They were up only 77 cents, but we did talk about this one yesterday about how they would be testing this $40 mark, and they did that exactly. Spend most of the day flirting with this $40 zone. As you can see, since the S&P inclusion, it has just been cruising. And over the last 5 years, it's up 300%. That's just incredible. You just can't beat that sort of return. Unless, of course, we're going back to talking about NVIDIA, which we won't do. Okay, so here's PLTR's chart. This is on the 1 minute, so this is dialed in quite a bit here. But again, it just really flirted with that $40 level, did something to the same degree of what Joby did, where it came over that important level and then it came back underneath and closed right around that mark. Actually, today it was to a T, $40.01. So got some call owners to or call sellers to have to get rid of those shares that they had, those covered calls. Uh, so a lot of shares are going to be bought on this one. Really, just an incredible stock, uh, and that's all I can say about that. It's all just interesting. I'm not telling anyone to buy. I'm not telling anyone to sell, but this is all very interesting stuff, and I implore you to do some more research on these companies because they are definitely worth looking at. Okay, next up, we've got JPMorgan. JPMorgan, really, we called it on this one, guys. We're talking about this one over the last couple days, how it was breaching this median band on the Heiken Ashi candles, and it breached this median band yesterday, went down to about 205 and a half or so, closed around there, and then today it just had a monster day. JP Morgan was up $7.46 or about 3.5%, closing at 211.22. It says here. I saw on another app it was 211.44, but that could just be an error with TradingView because I do have these Heiken Ashi candles up. Or it could be an issue with the other app that I was using today. Okay, so really interesting. Really good job on anyone that took that call yesterday that below this median band was a buy. We were kind of expecting it to go maybe a little bit lower, but we did say that if it goes below this band, typically we've seen buying. So we've seen it here, just going over what we said yesterday. We've seen it here. We've seen it here. Here, it didn't even get below. It just breached it, and then that was it. It was just back up to the races. Down here, same story. So really, uh, it seems like if things continue at this rate, this might be just either sideways or back to the upside because we did just reach this or breach this median band and we bounced. So good job for anybody that was long on JPM today, especially if you bought calls at the open. What a payout, I'm sure. Okay, last but not least, we've got the S&P. Really not too much to talk about here. Uh, if you were following along for the day, we can just go back. Actually, you know what? I wanted to talk about this. So we've been talking about this all week about how the Heiken Ashi has been pointing to visiting this median band, and it just decided that it was going to go the other direction. Now, we have seen something similar to this in the past, where if you look like here, for example, we had three of these red candles in a row, and then we had one green to kind of fake us out, and then it was back straight down. So we could see something like this. Again, this week I've been talking about this, that we've been sideways. This market is waiting for something, and I believe that it was waiting for today's reports and yesterday's reports, and it's just been digesting that information. You've got a lot of money moving around based on these reports. Don't be surprised if today was a fake out and next week we see some downside like we were seeing earlier in the week, because this this Heiken Ashi candle pattern it's pretty good, I would say. It's pretty reliable, but hey, if this thing starts going back up, it's it's also possible that this market can continue, but I see it as unlikely because you have this election season, you've got the Middle East tensions, you've got we talked about earlier in the week, the auto industry seems to be in shambles. You've got aviation, if I haven't mentioned that already, in shambles. A lot of problems. I was talking with a couple of folks today about how the the real business, in real time business, is not doing so good over the last like 2 weeks. Um, so we're getting these data points like the non-farm payrolls number this morning, which is a total blowout, and everyone's all excited. But as I discussed yesterday, that's going to weaken the Fed's base case for lowering rates further and faster, and they're going to be probably holding monetary policy where it is, or very slowly bringing down rates if they're going to stick to their guns with what they say. I saw there was, I believe it was Larry Ellison said that uh, the the 50 basis point cut in September was a mistake. So I saw that on Bloomberg today. Very interesting stuff. Uh, so yeah, that was today. Let's just take a quick look at S&P 500's chart for the day. Okay, so we started off big green, right? And then came down, flirted with this median band for most of the day, and then just took off around, let's see, this looks like about 220. So again, really good job for anyone that went long here. I was not calling this. I did say, I believe it was a day or two ago, that when these reports come out, I would not expect the S&P to go over the 5760 mark, and it did not. So if you were using that, congratulations for using my top of the range, but really it didn't come too much into play here. That would have been more important if it went to like 5780 at the open, for example. It would have probably been just a short right out the gate, as it was today, but it did recover at the end of the day. Now, keep in mind that funds typically enter positions at the end of the day and sell them at the beginning. So this could be funds trying to enter short positions at a high, and then, they might close next week sometime. So we'll see. This is all speculative in nature, what I'm saying, but it's just interesting to look at this with a different lens sometimes. So that's the S&P. I hope everybody made some money today, and just keep an eye on all these different companies. I know we went over a lot today, but it is important because there are opportunities to be had. We still have these non-farm payrolls up here and the unemployment rate. I want to keep that up there to the end of the video because I really do think it's important that we realize that these numbers are really, in my opinion, not real. It's mostly fake to help out with politics. It's mostly fake to help the Fed's narrative. I don't really see why they would do this, where they would make these numbers higher than expected, but maybe they're just trying to make the candidates who are in office look better until the election is over, and then they will make the real numbers come out. These numbers typically do get revised, and they are typically much worse than what their initial estimates are, or what they call the actual right now, uh, what that is. All right, so that's for today's episode. The quote of the day is from Sun Tzu. In the midst of chaos, there's also opportunity. Something to keep in mind as we navigate these volatile markets. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for catching today's episode of Kry Finance. I'm Kry. Have a good night.